Acts 27. Acts 27, the 33rd verse. If you read it, say, bring it. The text reads like this. As day was about to dawn, Paul urged them to take some food, saying, today is the 14th day that you have continued in suspense and without food, having taken nothing. Now, we don't know if the entire crew did a corporate fast or were they too stressed to eat. But they had not eaten in quite some time. It has been 14 days with no food. It could have been a fast, or as some of us know, you could be so stressed and so worried that you have no appetite. God Almighty. And so that's where we find the crew. And the text says, verse 34, this is Paul, therefore I urge you to take some food. It will give you strength, for not a hair is to perish on your worried little heads. You're worried, but there's not a hair on your head of any of you would perish. The text says, and when he had said these things, he took bread and giving thanks to God in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat it. Some say that Paul did a Holy Communion. Right. Others said Paul just fixed him a sandwich. But the text goes on to say, then they were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. We were in all 276 persons in the ship. It was a lot of people on that ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. If you pray for me this morning, guys, I want to deal with as a topic, we're all going to make it, part 2. You may be seated. I hope you guys didn't miss that, the faith that's shown in that last verse when it says that they threw all the wheat overboard. After they ate the Last Supper, they threw then the remaining wheat overboard, which means that they had to have had faith that they weren't going to eat another meal on that ship. God. And so the text this morning is to continue the thought I told you last week that not just one or a few, Koinonia, I'm telling you, we're all going to make it. I remember several summers ago, I was at A.B. Palmer Park, Cedar Grove, Shreveport, Louisiana, USA. 8th grade, we had just finished hooping in the park. We went to the side of the bench, we sat on the back of the bench, and my friend Tim Mims sat next to me. We played on concrete back then, messed our knees up. So we just finished playing basketball. Who's old enough to remember Jungle Juice? I love y'all. I love y'all. I love y'all. If you know what Jungle Juice is, then you just too young, right? So we were partaking in Jungle Juice as we're sitting there on the back of the bench, 8th graders. And when I looked to my right, I noticed that Tim was looking at Tim. Tim had muscles in like the 3rd grade. It's just like a freak of nature. And the bigger he got, the bigger this joker got. And so I looked to my right, and Tim was looking at me. I want to say, what you looking at? But before I can ask him what he was looking at, here's what he said. He said, running man, you gonna make it. He had a certain sense of assurance, surprise, pride, joy, expectation. He said, running man, you gonna make it. 5-6 years later, Tim got murdered. But his prophecy, when he spoke over my life, I'll never forget. He said, now listen, he prophesied this in the midst of a whole lot of stuff going on in the park. If you grew up in the hood, public parks, you know a lot happened in the park. And in the midst of everything going on around us, he looked at me as an 8th grader. I think with Tim, he got held back a grade, so he was a 9th grader really, but officially 8th grader. But he looked at me, running, man, you gonna make it. And something in that moment, I felt that he was speaking beyond his years. And so before I get in this text this morning, I need to recruit you one more time. I need you to look at that same neighbor whose name that you learned earlier and just tell him, you gonna make it. Just tell him you're gonna make it. Come whatever. Now, you are going to make it. KC, man, y'all gonna make it. Last week, we learned about the proper posture that we must be in order to make it, because if you're going to make it, you got to have the right posture. You got to have the right positioning to make it. And last week we learned that the proper posture was, number one, you got to start listening. You got to stop being hard-headed. If you're going to make it, you got to listen to somebody. Listen to some godly counsel based in some word. If you want to stop being hard-headed and start listening, Beyonce. And then number two, you got to treat people right. You can't expect to make it and you mean. Ugly people don't make it. And so you must, and not only must you treat people right, but be willing to speak up when necessary. Sometimes you gotta, here it is, it's your business. Anytime you see anything that don't line up with kingdom, don't let people make you feel as though you have no right to address wrong when you are a kingdom citizen. You get what I'm saying? You have every right to speak up or tell them, well, don't do it in front of me, because you do it in front of me, you must know that I am a thermostat, not a thermometer. I change the room. I don't look like the room. You got to let them know who you are. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And then number three, you got to be willing to cut it once you realize the price is way too high. You must be willing to cut some things away. And this morning we're picking up after they got the posture. They now started back to eat. They're encouraged. And something happens in verse 39. Now when it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they noticed a bay with a beach, on which they planned, if possible, to run the ship ashore. When they woke up next morning and discovered it was day, because all night they've been tossed and turned and they did not know where they were, they woke up next morning and didn't recognize the land. But they knew it was a bay. And they made a goal. First step today is set a goal. Set a goal to be reached. They did not recognize where it was they were going, but they knew where they wanted to go was better than where they were currently. See, sometimes it ain't about knowing where you're going, it's about realizing where you are. And if you realize that you are not where you want to be, then the option to stay there is no longer an option. I love Shreveport, but Shreveport wasn't for me. You may love Chicago, and you know nothing about Dallas. You know nothing about Arlington, but you know that it's not working where you are. And sometimes it's everybody's trying to figure out what to do. How about realizing what you should not do first? It's easier to realize what you should not be doing, because oftentimes what you should be doing has not yet to be revealed. Why are you still vacillating on keeping on doing what ain't working? Yeah. It's about to kill you, and you still trying to figure out, well, how much longer? Yeah. So, I mean, you're not dumb, but I'm saying, why keep doing the same thing, expecting different results? Sometimes God will say, okay, I need you to go in faith, and I'm not going to tell you what's over there. But do you realize that where you are ain't where it's at. So they woke up next morning and decided, they set a new goal. We're about to leave here and make our way over here. Now, when I say we're all going to make it, making it is indicative of wherever God has purposed you to be. Where God chooses to prosper you, except wherever in your mind that spells victory for you, that's making it. And making it is different depending on the individual. That makes sense what I'm saying. But if you're going to make it, number one, set yourself a goal. And then secondly, in verse 40, so they cast off the anchors and left them in the sea, at the same time loosing the ropes and tied the rudders, then hoisting the foresail to the wind, and they made for the beach. They cast off the anchors and left them in the sea. Oh God. This is the 5th time that they cut some stuff away. The first time was in verse 18. It says, since we were violently storm-tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo. Number one. Then secondly, on the 3rd day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard. And then a 3rd time in verse 32, then the sailors cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. And then number 4 in verse 38, and when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. And now number 5, they're cutting away the anchors. Here it is, people. When you're on your faith walk, when you're on your journey, you will have to not cut once. Every level is going to be a cutting. And sometimes you have to subtract in order for God to multiply. You see, you did good cutting away some things when you first got saved. But that was good for that level. If you want to go to the next level, God says, okay, you ready? I need you to cut something else. And it's up to you where your growth stops. Your growth will stop when you're no longer willing to prune. I'm not cutting, I'm pruning. If I'm going to grow, I got to prune. And so, okay, here it is. So you were good. When you first got saved, okay, I'm saved. I'm going to now, okay, I'm saved now. I'm about to stop. I'm going to cut my gang-banging friends away. That was good when you first got saved. But now you got saved and got you a good job. Things are going well. But you got some petty coworkers that you like going to happy hour with. It's time to cut it. Then you cut them away. Now God is growing you. Now you find you a great church home. You're serving. And now you ran into some messy members. You got to cut them too. Every step for the rest of your being, there's going to be something that you need to cut. Help me, Holy Ghost. And some of us, it blows our mind when we get saying, well, God, I'm cutting a whole lot of stuff, but I'm not growing. Watch this. I got to read a little more. I ain't got to my sermon yet. Verse 41. They got in position. They got the cut stuff away. They got a goal. And now they're cruising towards the shore. Now I can see kind of why they was willing to throw the wheat over. The shore is right there. We don't need all this stuff. Let's get there as fast as we can. And now we're cruising in the ship. But then verse 41 happens. But striking a reef, they ran the vessel aground. The boat stuck and remained immovable, and the stern was being broken up by the surf. Wait, God, I did everything you said to do. Why am I stuck? Wait, no, God, you don't understand. I'm a lot better than I used. I see my goal right there, and I was cruising. and now I'm stuck. And not only were they stuck, the Bible said that the waves start to beat against the ship and tear it apart. What do you do when you was cruising? And not only are you stuck, but life is tearing you apart.
Yes, it is.
It's beating you, it's tearing you apart. But God, how can I be stuck now? What happened to the boat I rode on? Why destroy the boat? Because God said the season for your ship is done. People, I need y'all to track with me on this, because here is the place where we start to question God the most. When we did everything God said to do, how under heaven am I stuck and falling apart when I did everything you said to do? Did you know the stuff God I gave up for you? I stopped smoking crack for you, God. You're not dumb, we sound sometimes. We be trying to check God for giving up stuff, Xavier, that we should have never got started. God, I stopped robbing people for you, God. That's stupid stuff. God, I don't got them in different area codes no more. I don't have them in different area codes for you, God, like I used to. If you don't know the song, count yourself saved. If your kids know the song, it's too late. In different area codes. It's like stuff that we should have never got started. We want to say, God, I gave that up for you. So here they are, stuck. The ship is falling apart, having sacrificed so much, still on the sea, and now you got to be really worried. So watch what happens when we find ourselves stuck between a rock and a proverbial hard place. The text says, quite intriguing, by the way. The text says, the soldiers, verse 42, plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any should swim away and escape. You see, a soldier's job was to make sure that every prisoner that was in their custody made it to where they're supposed to go. If a prisoner got away, then the soldier was put to death. So the soldier said, okay, man, let's kill them all so nobody get away. Here's what I find ironic about that. The soldiers were willing to do the same thing that the sailors were ready to do to them last week. Remember last week I read the text that the sailors, their plan was to sneak away in a rescue boat and leave the soldiers and prisoners on the boat to die. And then Paul said, hey, Julius, they about to bounce. If they die, if they leave, we're going to all die. And so then the soldiers, to save everyone's life, they cut the rescue boat. Now, when pressure hits, they're willing to do the same thing that they criticize the sailors for being tempted to do to them. Are you ready for this? Isn't it ironic that life and pressure can make you do some stuff that other people did to you? You called it dirty when they did it, but life set you up to do the same. You see, it's cool what they do. I want to pause right here because you really don't know what you're capable of doing if life gets you in the right situation. There's some stuff you would do you thought you would never do. Pressure bust a pipe. There's some things that some people did to you that you said was dirty. You cussed them out and said you are dirty. You are dirty. And circumstance happened and you did the same thing to somebody. You hurt somebody in the same way somebody hurt you. And you excuse it because God knows my heart. God knows my heart. I mean, it's different because he knows my heart. He know I ain't really dirty like that. They were dirty. He knows my, what, hell, if it was wrong for them to do, hell, it's wrong for you to do. That's not, if it's wrong, it's wrong. You can't say it's wrong because it's you, fool. You dumb self. In my thing, people, what I'm trying to share with you is that don't be so quick to criticize and get down on people for when they mess up, because you never know what life will land you, and you do the same thing that they did. So be slow, Galatians 6:1. If a brother is called to sin, you who are spiritual, restore him. So that really wasn't part of my sermon. I had to interject that piece. That was intermission. Well, God bless your life for recognizing good preaching. So the soldiers were ready to put everybody to death. And here is where the sermon gets intriguing. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul. This centurion, whose name we discovered earlier in the text, was Julius. That's how we know he was black. Julius is a black name. Remember the Titans? How many white boys you know named Julius? Julius wished to save Paul. And because he was going to save Paul, he saved everybody Paul was with. I says, because when you get favor, it don't just stop with you. God Almighty. The reason why you got to be okay with being the only saved one in the house is because God needs one to save the house. It might just be you. I'm sorry, but God has a plan and call on your life. That's why you can't do what your neighbors do. You can't do what your homeboys do. Why? Because God wants to save some people through you. And if you can't get it right, it's not just you, but she suffers, and she suffers, and he suffers. So, favor is restricted to just you. And the reason why you got to fight to be right, because if you don't fight to be right, they don't stand a chance around you. Are you with what I'm saying? So you got it. You got to make up your own. My God, do it through me. How? Do it through me, God. So it says. So Julius, he wanted to save Paul. Watch what we did. Oh man, Julius went to work. Now, mind you, this centurion, him and Paul had never did anything to deserve that